Hey guys, just wanted to jump on here really quick. I've had a lot of people reach out to me in terms of how they can support what I'm doing. I am doing this full time now, and if you'd like to contribute, if you like and value the work that I'm doing and like to contribute, on every single episode, I have a title "Support My Work." Underneath it, there's a Venmo, Locals, Cash App, or if you prefer not to use one of those methods, you can mail a check or money order to PO Box 25383, Scottsdale, Arizona 85255 9998. So, again, thank you for all the support. Appreciate it and look forward to more conversations ahead. All right, we all look our best today. Everybody looking
Oh
pretty and ready
yeah,
for camera.
I'm sure.
Very high standards.
What's up, guys? Happy New Year to both of you.
Happy New Year to you, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, you've
Yeah,
been having a good year, best I can tell, Mike.
Yeah,
yeah, you're really pumping them out.
yeah. You know
Yeah.
what? I was thinking about this actually. It's February. It'll be a year that I've been independent, and the growth that I've experienced has been tremendous, and would not have occurred without both of you guys coming on as much as you do. So I thank you for that.
Oh shucks.
We're cock. We're the cock. We're the filler.
You're on my
Yeah.
carousel of regulars.
On an off day, they still get something.
Well, and we've talked about this. I mean, I don't know where all this is going to go in 2025, but it's going to be entertaining, and there's going to be a lot of conversations to be had, and because this carousel is not stopping.
No.
It's accelerating.
Yeah, what's really getting me is uh, these brand new imperial fantasies that seem to have popped out of the new Trump regime to take over. He seems to be a little bit more serious about taking over Canada than I originally thought. It seemed to be a gag at first. I'm not sure it's a gag anymore. And the whole resource question kind of leans in the direction of maybe it's for real.
My guess, my hunch is it's not that real. I think it might be trying to set up strong trade, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Trump. Someone said take him literally, take him seriously, but not literally, right?
yeah,
And so everything that comes out of his mouth is both spontaneous and has a purpose, I think.
yeah. The Panama Canal thing seems reasonable to me. That
Exactly.
the Monroe Doctrine really there's a reason for it. Even though it's at least 200 years old, uh, it probably still obtains as a good uh, uh, rule for our relations with other people in the world. And the Chinese are really kind of abusing it. So maybe we got to straighten that situation out. Greenland, I don't know. Greenland, most of it's under a huge ice cap, and I don't know what you do about that. And uh, supposedly a resource grab. Who knows? Well, why? I don't. It's not clear to me why Denmark needs it or wants it. It must be an administrative drag on them. What do you think about that?
Did you read what Whitney Webb wrote yesterday in regards to
Nope.
Greenland?
Oh,
I'll read it to both of you guys. People should consider, I'm quoting her, people should consider that arguably the main interest in Greenland, and also likely Canada as well, from the Trump camp and Musk is related to vast mineral deposits,
Sure.
particularly those necessary for the energy transformation and EV revolution that is directly tied to the business interests of Musk as well as other prominent big tech figures. For example, aside from Musk, Jeff Bezos, who recently gave very, very generously to Trump's inauguration fund, backs a firm called Cobalt Metals, along with Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, who both back Kamala, and Mark Andreessen, currently advising Trump on tech policy, that is drilling in Greenland for EV-related minerals. Northern Canada also possesses significant deposits of minerals essential to EV production. The digital transformation that these Silicon Valley oligarchs are attempting to manifest would admittedly require all of the known deposits of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and several other minerals across the planet. The U.S. itself is not necessarily rich in these minerals, with some occasional exceptions, but some of its neighbors are. If you are cheerleading for this, be aware that one, will help accelerate the sustainable development digital transformation that needs these minerals specifically. Two, is not in the interest of the public of any of these countries, but instead in the interest mainly of American tech billionaires. Three, will devastate the environment of Canada and Greenland. Mining these things can permanently wreck the environment and water table. Four, boosting access to EV metals will also likely require existing incentives to purchase EV cars in the US to stay, so these mining ventures have a high ROI. Trump has spoken about removing them, but his ties to Musk and other big tech billionaires suggests it is unlikely.
Yeah, well, it is a resource grab, that's for sure. And she's just being a little bit more explicit about the direction that it comes from and is going in. So, yeah.
I'm not convinced. Not convinced the EV revolution is well founded. I'm not
Yeah, I'm not
convinced
either.
I'm not convinced we can get to it.
Yeah. The way things are going right now, the middle class is just so battered they can't afford to buy cars of any kind. It's
Right.
becoming increasingly difficult for them. So I don't really see that as the EV revolution as something that's going to happen. And I'm reverting more and more to something that I put aside for quite a few years, which is my involvement with the New Urbanist organization, a movement that was that came along to promote walkable communities. And of course, you have to make a distinction between this so-called 15-minute city and the walkable communities of the new urbanists. People have become the public's really confounded about those things now. And the 15-minute city idea has become so demonized that people are unable to think about the virtues of reforming the way that we develop the landscape in America. We have this terrible problem of having suburbanized most of America. And, I maintain what I did years ago in my books, that this is a living arrangement that just doesn't really have a future. So, all the technologies that bend in the direction of sustaining that seem to be foolish to me. And we should be putting much more of our thought and effort into the idea of returning to traditional town planning and reforming the suburban clusterfuck, if possible. It may not be there may not be that much to save there for various reasons, but we're going to have to do something. We have a lot of existing towns and that can be re-inhabited and revived. It's going to be a very tough transition. And I don't think that electric vehicles are going to play a huge role in it.
Um, the other thing is, I'm not a club of Romer, but they're not completely wrong either. And I think
Yeah,
I think it's a finite orb, right?
yeah.
Which has been your policy since as long as I've known you. Um, and 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 I think everyone's talking about how we need new immigrants, new entrants. If you need new entrants to pay off existing entrants, that's a classic case of a Ponzi scheme. So
Yeah.
I think what we really need is a transition to potentially to a smaller population, and it's conceivable. It's conceivable the globalists, as savage as they can be, are also have a realistic streak in them, and they're trying to figure out some way to get there.
Well, there's also this thing in the background of, all of the vaccine injuries that have been done to people and whatever the time bomb is lurking now in their bodies that is going to take them out sooner rather than later. And I don't have a conclusive opinion about it, but I think you have to admit it's a little ominous.
Well, there's another problem. There's a dropping birth rate And right
Yeah.
now, the problem is you can't pull signal out of the noise because there's two contributors that I know of, and one is the potential that we fried ovaries with the vaccine, and we certainly did some of that. And the other is that this new generation is so stuck to their phones that they're actually not procreating, and that there's some of that too.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of other social dynamics that, besides phone addiction, that are defeating, normal male-female relations.
Like they can't afford to have kids, right? Things
There's
like that.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the problem of having so few meaningful roles for males in this society, and so many young men with no purpose. It really makes mating kind of difficult too. So, this is coming from many directions, and it's kind of ominous. But um, there are many people, many movements, political factions that see a contraction in the population, and I agree with you. I think that they're not necessarily wrong.
Yeah, they just the problem is their methods may be wrong.
Yeah,
I'd
yeah,
like them to be honest and say, look, here's the deal. You know,
yeah.
you,
And the amount of visible fuckery that's coming out of the WEF is just so overwhelmingly obnoxious
well,
that
it's almost a distraction too. I mean,
yeah,
when you get Yuval Harari talking about putting, electrodes in your head and stuff, they it seems they can't be serious about that. That it seems to me that must be, sort of, what Trump does, where he throws out bogeys to get you to chase
yeah,
him and
yeah,
get you
gag.
to argue. I posted a tweet the other day, yesterday maybe, where I said, while you're all talking about the annexation of Greenland, Mexico, Panama Canal, and Canada, you're not talking about the things that would be drawing a lot of attention, like appointments. So,
Yeah.
I don't think you can rule out the possibility that Trump has just thrown up a huge smokescreen.
Well, that's a very
Meanwhile,
interesting idea. Yeah.
well,
A
meanwhile,
diversion.
yeah, meanwhile, the press is not hammering. Might even be cover for those who have to suck up his appointments and don't like it, but he's thrown up the cover so that it's not on the news all day,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
Rubio on one side, and Kennedy and Bhattacharya on the other side, and Tulsi Gabbard. And so Trump's good appointments, Trump's bad appointments. It provides cover for everyone if we're arguing about Greenland.
He's got quite a crew coming in if they can actually get confirmed. It's, almost unimaginable the kind of turmoil that is going to be created by those appointments. I
They,
mean,
they could
just in
be
the
they could be like Vikings coming down to England in the
berserkers.
ninth century or whatever it was,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
each one of them, what's really noticeable is, besides the fact each one of them looks like they have a certain brawler gene in them, right? They've all shown the ability to stand up to power,
Yeah.
and they're young, and they've all got shark bites on their ass from having been treated poorly by the system that they're being asked to change.
Yeah. It's
Except
hard.
for guys like Rubio, who just looks like he's there for some other purpose.
I think the purpose was partly to get him out of the Senate and get him off of the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Oh, that's interesting. See, some
Uh,
people view it as a way is a danger where he is. That's kind of a neutering effect. Then
yeah, the way I
I
see
hadn't
it.
thought about it.
I mean, the Senate,
I thought he was just a chameleon, and Trump sat him down and said, "Here's what I need you to do. If you can't
I
do it,
think
I'll
he
fire
is.
you."
I think he
Right.
is kind of a chameleon.
So if Trump said to him, "Here's what I'm going to do. If you want the job, you got it, but I'll fire you in a split second if you can't do this job."
Yeah.
Well, why do you guys think the Gates, with the whole intention behind that was? Because Gates then is out, he's out. He loses his seat in Florida. He doesn't even get to the confirmation or the hearings for the attorney general, and then he ends up on One American News with a show.
Yeah, the rumor is that he intends to run for governor of Florida when Ron DeSantis faces his term limit. And, that may be so.
He
Otherwise,
went
it's a
too
little,
easy,
little
right?
weird.
He went too easy.
Yeah,
He
a little
left way
bit.
too easy. He didn't even get beat up on the way out.
But I think he made so many enemies in the House that he probably felt he couldn't function there anymore. And that, I suppose that prompted him to just, cut and run.
Because him and Kevin McCarthy, they hated each other, still do.
Yeah, well, Kevin McCarthy's not in the scene anymore, but he has a lot of allies left in the House who have a grudge. So
I don't like any of our speakers.
yeah, I don't know. For me, the jury's a little out on Mike Johnson. He has to make some pretty unpopular moves in order to just do
Get
business
something
there.
done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with what a a 3-vote majority, Republican
Yeah, right.
majority. He doesn't have much to work with, so
Well,
he's
that's
gonna
that.
he's gonna end up doing things that displease a lot of people.
As to the Silicon Valley guys moving toward Trump, and a lot of people visited Mar-a-Lago, and a lot of pro-Trumpers are having cows. I go, but you don't know what's being discussed inside Mar-a-Lago, right? So he calls
Yeah,
all the farmer guys to Mar-a-Lago. Oh, the rig's in, right? No, he might have sat him down and said, "Here's what I'm going to do,
yeah,
and you're going to get over it. And here's what I'm not going to do, and you're going to benefit from that.
yeah.
But stay out of my way, right? Or we are going to have a fight, and you can win under me, but here's how we're going to play it, right?" And
Yeah, we
I
sort of need a pharmaceutical industry. It's just a
yeah,
question
exactly.
of whether they're going to be villains or normal, normal contributing corporate citizens. Right now,
Survey says.
they're looking pretty bad. They
Well, we've
Well,
got,
he could rebuild their rep. He could help them rebuild their
yeah,
rep
but we as
because
a,
their rep sucks.
but as a society, we've become so dependent on pharma on so many layers, right? I mean,
yeah.
you have kids that are on antidepressants. How many people are on Ozempic today? Birth control, Adderall,
These
on
these
and
have
on and
all
on
been
and on.
already developed. They're already developed.
Yeah, but people rely on this. So many
I
people
know.
rely on this stuff.
We can get those from China. We can get those from India. We can get those from Mexico. Pharma.
I'm not sure that we want to get
Well, we
everything
already
from.
are. We already
Yeah,
are.
yeah, and it's
Right?
not a good situation. I think a lot of
No,
people
no,
recognize
it's
that.
not. But pharma's becoming a platform company. Pharma, the companies are. I heard somewhere someone said that Groton, Connecticut site hasn't produced something in X years. Now, I know that not to be true because I collaborated on Chantix, so I happen to know about
Hmm.
Chantix, um, and that was a biggie. But I think pharma more and more and more is just watching the horizon, saying, okay, there's a discovery over there that looks like it has potential. We'll buy that company. The small companies can't take a drug to market. They do not have the firepower to take a drug to market.
Yeah,
Pfizer has the firepower and the marketing to get it there. The problem we have is, and this is from one of my colleagues from years ago, he went to China and they went on this junket. And he said, we're sitting there in this laboratory with the minister of chemistry or whatever, minister of health. And he says, the laboratory is best described as the scene, the final scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it went as just far as the eye could see. It was gigantic with a Chinese guy at every hood doing an experiment, right?
hmm
And the guy said, what we did when we went to China as a pharmaceutical industry is we went to China to get the first kilogram of anything we needed. And that turns out to have influenced my career. So I've paid close attention to this because they used to say we can't do this kind of chemistry because it can't be scaled. And then pharma realized, wait a minute, 9 out of 10 drugs die. And as a consequence, we just need a kilogram to, as I like to say, jam it into soccer moms, see if they die. And then 9 out of 10 are going to, kill Fauci's, orphans that he's jamming it into. And so they need, time is money for them. So they need the first kilogram. So China provided all the first kilograms. That was their entry to pharma. And the guy stood up there and he says, we've got total control of the kilogram market now. He says, we're now going after med chem. So now you're talking a gazillion Chinese guys looking to get the patents. And that's a different world.
Well, are we trying to steal their intellectual property by doing that? Is that the idea?
No, if they have the patents, then they got the football.
Uh-huh.
Well, we could in theory steal it, but that's not typically, I think, how we work. And so that'll become, Pfizer will then be a distributor for a Chinese derived drug.
Yeah. Well, you get the first kilogram, you can always reverse engineer whatever you're getting, right?
No, they know what it is,
Uh-huh.
but there are, Pfizer knows how to globally patent stuff, and China will steal it, but the rest of the world won't.
Uh-huh.
But the big money at Pfizer is by owning the rights to the drug, not the first kilogram, right?
Well, it
And
does kind of depend on, how stable China remains and
Well, it
and
does,
how friendly our relations with them remain. And I'm not sure that either of those things look that bright.
which really means that it could really blow up. But
Yeah.
I'm not convinced there's that many new drugs that are that useful. I
Yeah.
think they've
Yeah.
milked that cow hard. And you look at these new drugs coming out, and yeah, I was sitting there with my grandchildren watching a television commercial that came out. I said, "Watch this television commercial. Watch this carefully." And they're all sitting there. They're kids. I go, "What does that drug cure at the end?" And they didn't know.
They only know that there are 110 ways it can kill you
And they know
because
that
that's
there's a
half
bunch
the
of old,
commercial.
old, semi-portly bald guys walking around in the commercial smiling because their life is somehow better, right?
Yeah.
But there's really a tremendous problem where I think there's big developments coming out, but it's the low line fruit's been picked. Penicillin,
Yeah. I also wonder what is going to be the fate of some of these guys like Albert Bourla, the executives who presided over the. Well, I mean,
hopefully not,
it
but
would be that something's going to happen with them. They've been kind of just coasting for the last 3 years on the Biden administration's inaction.
right.
But when things change, the spotlight is going to fall back on them and the decisions they made and the liability protections that they enjoyed that they may be taken away from them. And
You
it
think that
just,
would be grandfathered though? Would it be taken away and therefore now they can be fined for things done in the past? I don't
well, I
think
mean, we do
so.
have an ex post facto rule in American law
Tell me
that
explain that, elaborate.
uh, that you can't prosecute people for new laws that
Right.
contradict what the law was before. So
You
if they did something under an old law, you can't just create a new law and then,
say they're
nail
guilty. Right. Right. Unless you're Trump.
them. Well, I mean, they can use any kind of fuckery in the
There's a Trump
lawfare
clause. There's a Trump
yeah.
clause.
But I don't think that these guys who ran the pharmaceutical companies during the COVID vaccine program are necessarily going to get off. I think the spotlight's going to fall back on them, and also on the hundreds of employees in American public health who misbehaved. It just blows my mind that the CDC is still promoting vaccinations, and
Of
especially for little kids.
6 month old, 6 month old.
It's insane. You know, uh, is the whole thing really that they're just doing it up to the very last moment so that they can, you know, pretend that they didn't know that there was some problem with the vaccines? I mean,
I mean,
it's
it could be
hard.
they're promoting it because they can't. It could be like the Nord Stream pipeline, where no matter what, we're not going to admit we blew it up.
Yeah, but
Right. And so we have to pretend like we don't know what happened. And so,
but
but
I
I
don't think they
think you,
can pretend after a certain point. They can only pretend while they have friendly protection from the Biden administration.
right.
See,
But without that protection and with very aggressive new administration in HHS, uh, whether it's Bobby Kennedy or somebody else,
So
and with
Bobby Kennedy's Maha, that's totally a smokescreen.
I was
They're
just
you
gonna,
setting
think,
up this. Well, it's a smoke. I think it's an important problem, but
yeah,
that's not what Bobby Kennedy cares about.
yeah,
Bobby Kennedy cares about pharma.
yeah, and
So he's
corporate
saying
capture.
Maha so that he looks like he's just here to help everybody where he wants to skewer those bastards,
see,
right?
see, I think,
So
I
I,
think
I
so.
think that's just cover.
I think,
I
see,
think that's just cover.
I think the Maha though, like, did you watch the Danny Jones show with Jack Cruz, Mary Bowden, and Callie Means? You guys watch that?
I didn't. I had it teed up and I never got to it.
Oh, it was one of those.
How many times does that happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Dave, did you watch it?
No, I saw just a tiny shard of it.
People send me about 30 hours of video a day. I just can't get to it.
I know. You have to start
You
doing
can't keep up. I
calculations
can't
on,
keep up.
well, you have to ask yourself when you're looking at an hour video, you say, at the end, what am I going to have that I didn't have an hour ago? You really have to start doing that math.
Wait, say that again?
Well, you have to do the math and say, where am I going to be an hour from now? What am I going to have that's going to justify the hour that I'm going to burn? I watched Blagojevich, for example, on Rogan. And it was a brilliant interview for about an hour and a half, and then I gave up. The brilliant interview was the brutalization of Rod Blagojevich by the system. And I think that I read about Michael Milken. I read a book about Michael Milken's prosecution. And I think this lawfare and this authoritarianism story, you can't drop the ball on. So the first hour and a half of Rogan's Blagojevich interview is worth watching because the stuff they did to him. And he calls out, he says, Comey and these guys are just so corrupt. And he says, you just have no choice. And he explained what it was like going to prison and stuff. It's an interesting presentation.
Yeah. How much did it cost him to defend himself?
I don't remember him mentioning that number. But he was in prison for 7 or 8 years. I mean, this is a guy who actually doesn't seem to have actually done anything.
Yeah.
Right.
He was governor of Illinois.
Right. Well, that was the problem. And he got a 14-year term. He said that helped him in prison because they say when you get they call him a 14er. He said, because that means if you get a 14-year term, that means you didn't rat anyone out and they respect you. So the short termers are the guys they don't like because they know they gave up somebody.
Well, what do you imagine is going to happen inside the public health agencies? Because, I keep on coming back in my own mind to this fact that there are hundreds of these, deputy directors and associates and
all guilty of something.
All guilty of something, in what was really just a dreadfully destructive campaign against the American people.
Well,
this is the Auschwitz guard problem, right? This is the guard.
But they're not lowly guards. They're all high up administrators.
But this is where
they all get fired for starters.
This is where I think this is going, though. It's kind of coming back to what I said about the Danny Jones show, because Callie Means and Jack Cruz and Mary Bowden were on there, and Callie Means would not call for the shots to be pulled. Throughout the whole conversation. I mean, to the point where Jack Cruz was telling him, Jack Cruz was telling him to his face. It was actually really good. It was 3 hours.
And a lot of people suspect Callie Means as being some kind of a janky character.
Well, Mary, I mean, I've had Mary Bowden on here a few times over the years, and I had Jack Cruz on as well. And Mary's like, I'm paraphrasing, but she's like, I was getting attacked in 2020 and 2021. Where were you? Where was your sister? And Jack Cruz is flat out. He goes, I don't trust you. I think you're full of shit. You won't call for these shots to get pulled. Because every time he'd come back with a response saying, I want to get the society healthy. My concern, my passion is this. And he was talking, and he goes back to the food. So what I feel like could occur, they're going to move this so it all focuses on food. It all focuses on dyes and Skittles and seed oils, and to get people so moved away from vaccine injured. And I think that's to me was the direction it's heading.
That's interesting. I didn't hear about Callie Means. I hadn't heard the Callie Means accusation.
Well,
that was news to me.
And they also brought up the point too. You and your sister just come out of nowhere. You come out of nowhere. You land on Tucker.
I mentioned that they went from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds.
You land on Tucker.
Everybody I know regards them as sketchy characters.
Interesting. This is news to me. How did I miss all this?
Yeah, you should.
Part of it's because I've ignored this story because I've thought it was a smokescreen.
Well, Mike, the food thing might be to some extent a diversion, but the vaccine business depends partly, maybe largely, on actually what happens. What emerges in clinical reality over the next several years. How many people really do have damaged hearts and damaged immune systems, and how that plays out. They're not going to be able to hide that, and it's already, if you follow Ed Dowd and other people who are actually the ethical skeptic on
He's
Twitter.
phenomenal bioethical
Well, he's quite
skeptic.
a statistician and researcher, isn't he?
I wasn't even convinced he was one person.
Yeah,
I mean, he's one of
maybe
those
not.
prolific guys who cranks it out. Sir, you know this guy Ian Carroll on
Nope,
Twitter?
nope.
Yeah, you ought to check out Ian Carroll. He analyzes dark shit, but the volume that he puts out reminds me of what looks like the spokesperson of a group.
Hmm.
And so they are providing him with the information that he is. I worry some of these guys really are more than that. But an ethical skeptic is phenomenally good. So I
Hmm.
like what he puts out.
Yeah, and the statistics are really not that encouraging as far as the effects of the vaccine. There seems to be a large amount of disorder in people's health and
And
systems.
it's continuing. That's the thing. Is it
Yeah,
has
it's not
not it is
dropping.
not these. It's not like you either got whacked or you got through it. The
Yeah.
problems are showing up, and I would love to find out what the goddamn OBGYNs are seeing. Now, I
Hmm.
saw an interview of one who came from a 5-person practice. She didn't seem like she was a sort of a thought leader of any kind. She seems like she just spoke up. And she said that it's chaos in their office. They said the fertility
Wow.
problems and the miscarriages and stuff are off the charts. But I've
Yeah.
seen very little convincing data on that. But we don't know. They might have peeled 15 years off the average life expectancy of
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, and we may find that out. Of course, there's also a tremendous amount of noise behind that in our state alone, given the tremendous chaos in medicine in New York State. We have in my region, we have the major teaching hospital, Albany Med.
Mm-hmm.
It's in complete meltdown.
Well, tell
Uh,
me about that. I'm
oh,
not
it's
familiar
just
with this.
it's a disaster. You can't get appointments. They lose your records. They send your records to the wrong place. Their emergency room is overwhelmed with all kinds of, a lot of illegal alien mutts. Uh, it- the doctors' practices in New York have become so completely captured by private equity and other forces that they don't really function very well. You can't get appointments, you can't get referrals. The whole system is nuts, and I know that because my girlfriend just went through a difficult back surgery. She happened to have at Cornell Medical Center in New York City, and
We've done that one at Cornell Med too.
yeah, did you have Dr. Fu by any chance?
No, we had a guy, Dr. Warren, who was a
Yeah,
knee surgeon. We've done back and knee both at Cornell Med and NYU. And Warren was the orthopedic for the New York Giants. The guy was a total fighter pilot rock star. And
yeah.
but what you find is that there's some very seriously talented doctors, but that the healthcare there sucks. As soon as you need a bedpan change, you're in trouble.
It was pretty good. I was there in the hospital and
You
for
don't leave
5 days.
you don't
It was,
leave the person. You don't leave them
yeah,
though.
it was pretty good. The general care, the changing of dressings and all the routine stuff.
The
Fairly
NYU
okay.
is the worst for us. NYU was the really bad one.
Langone,
It is now. Yeah,
yeah.
Langone, you're right.
Hmm.
But my wife, for example, yesterday she was supposed to get a medical procedure done. She has an embedded morphine pump. It's embedded in her abdomen, so they actually inject through a needle into this morphine pump, and they canceled the appointment because the drug didn't arrive.
Yeah,
Now,
God,
whether they fucked up and didn't order it, I don't know. So we're having it tomorrow. So it's not a
yeah.
disaster, but um, I've noticed when you go to doctor's appointments, it's the 7.5 minutes. When you get a physical, they just draw blood. They don't strip you down and poke and prod you like they used to.
Yeah.
It's I don't miss the finger up the ass, but
Yeah, well, my larger point was there's so much noise in the system in our state anyway, and it's a big state. I imagine it's not much better in places like California, Illinois, and Florida. There's so much noise that whatever's going on in the doctor's office in terms of chaos is hard to separate out from the generalized background chaos of a melting down medical establishment.
or society.
Yeah.
In my writings, I tend to have these bulleted points where I just put anecdotes.
Mm-hmm.
And it struck me what percentage of them were California.
Oh.
It just statistically, California had 80% of them. So California's the tip of the spear for terrible ideas, right? They should just import Islam and let it be in California, right?
That seems to be the one problem that they don't have.
I know. But the idea that the California governor, who is totally captured by China, Peter Schweitzer goes through that very clearly in his most recent book. I mean, Newsom is completely owned by China. And to think that we would put him in the presidency, which you wouldn't want to bet against him in 2028, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I think he's been pretty badly discredited, and
I hope so, because he has in my book. But
yeah,
their bench is shallow.
I mean, the only thing he's really got going for him is that he appeals to women. He's a big, tall, handsome guy with a lot of hair, and
80s porn star.
Yeah, he looks like, yeah, and that's to me is his sole, his sole appeal at this point.
But he looks like a greaseball to me, right? It's really an unappealing. I mean, that's why I say 80s porn star, because you look at okay, he's kind of handsome, but the hair is not really a win to me. I can't see where that's a plus. And he looks evil. There's something wrong. There's something.
Well, he's destroyed his state, so he's wearing this aura of being a destructive character, So that shows up in kind of a different way.
So do you think the DNC is going to wake up and straighten themselves out? Because they certainly self-destructed.
Yeah,
I think that they got a
long march to clean up their act if they ever do, and it's conceivable to me that they're gonna fade away like the Whigs did at this point if they keep it up, especially, if they keep up the wokery and other fucking nonsense. They also, let's face it, they face the problem of becoming the party solely of people of color. And
the people of color aren't voting for him.
Yeah, and the people of color don't even like that anymore.
I know. Oh, yeah. So, you because you're black, you're so stupid you can't get an ID, so we'll help you, right? And it's like, if I were black, I'd be going, get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah. So they've managed to alienate everybody else, and now they're alienating what they think is their remaining base. It just seems like a loser party all around. So if they're going to rehabilitate themselves, it's going to have to be some like thorough, absolutely, top to bottom clean out of their system. And I don't know how they do that.
They have to sit back and watch Trump court all of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, and they have absolutely no charismatic leaders, on their bench. Not one. They've got they've got that defective Gavin Newsom. And that's it.
You got Shapiro in Pennsylvania. You got Shapiro in Pennsylvania.
No, I'm not so sure about him. I think he shot his wad.
He scares me.
I think he blew it.
He scares me. Yeah. I think I'm not anti-Semitic, but Shapiro scares me. His connections to Israel are too strong. Yeah. I want to know we're making decisions based on our interest. I don't trust him to do that.
Here's the other thing too. You don't even hear this is why I'm just skeptical with all this, because like after Trump won in 2016, you had this venom, and you're not seeing any of that right now. AOC, I haven't heard anything from her.
They're broken.
Pelosi, you just don't hear anything.
Yeah, I think they don't know because they're broken. I think they don't know what to do, what to say, how to position themselves at this point.
But
Their
there are
entire
just
platform has been pulled out from under them. The rug got pulled out
Yeah.
completely.
And even Jamie Raskin didn't pull the prank that he was expected to pull on January 6th with, you know, trying to obstruct Trump from getting certified with this insurrection narrative. That, he didn't even try that. And, they were shouting about that a month and a half ago. So,
Hoping to get
yeah.
some legs
So
on it, right?
what do you think happens with them, Dave, with the Democrats?
Uh, well, I do think they're either going to finish the self-destruction, as you say.
Yeah.
I don't know about the Whigs, but they almost have lost their entire base. It's almost embarrassing to admit you voted Democrat at this point, right? And I think the problem is, I think the populace is broken because they go, wait a minute, you told me at least we had a chance of not getting Trump, and you lied, right? So the one promise they made nonstop was we'll find a way to get Trump out of there.
Yeah.
And they not only lied, but the voters are having to watch the Trump supporters not just say we won. Like, when a Republican won in the past, I was not euphoric. I'm euphoric about Trump winning. And it's not that I think he's going to fix everything. I don't think he can. But I'm so glad that they jammed it up their asses so far.
Yeah.
That it's a Pyrrhic victory that I'm just reveling in. And I think the Democratic voters got to feel totally betrayed.
Uh-huh.
So what do? I don't know. They need whole new talent. They really need to get all the loonies out of there. They somehow have got to pick. There've got to be Democrats in Congress who are not nuts. Is that right or not?
I would think so. Yeah, they haven't stood up. They
I don't
haven't
know them.
spoken
I
up.
can't name them.
Yeah.
Their original, when they debated with Biden and 16, it looked like the Star Wars bar, right? I mean, it just it was Beto and if they had gone
Elizabeth
with
Warren.
but Elizabeth Warren at least had a certain old school credibility.
Well,
about
I don't
her,
know.
right?
You seem to have some kind of a sentimental attachment to her because you had a correspondence with her year.
I was
Well,
going
no,
to say, wasn't he on a Zoom call
no.
with her or something?
No. I used to swap emails, but no, it's because she opposed the banks.
Yeah, but what has she really managed to do since then?
Nothing. I've not supported her, but she doesn't look like Harris. She doesn't look like Biden, right?
By the way, how do you account for her failure? It's
I
really
don't
kind of
know.
a remarkable thing, isn't it?
She mutated. Something bad happened. She took to politics so quickly.
Yeah, in the worst way too.
In the worst way.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. She became like the left-wing analog of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Who is way better than people think, because people don't. The average Democrat probably doesn't know she ran a construction company before she was in Congress, right? And you go, oh, well, that's kind of not the same as just being a douchebag.
Yeah,
right?
She's a capable person, in short.
She's a capable person. By the way, the most capable president in history, in my opinion, was Herbert Hoover. You look at his you read his biography. That boy had skills. He inherited the Depression.
Yeah. Well, he inherited the bad behavior on Wall Street. And then I think one thing that people often don't realize is that he did actually set up quite a lot of machinery that FDR later got credit for.
Speaking of douchebags.
For mitigating, for attempting to mitigate the Depression. They couldn't mitigate the Depression, really. But Hoover did.
Well, actually, they made it
up
much worse. They exacerbated it. And they really torched it.
Yeah. And we return to that little-known episode around 1920-21, the Harding Depression, that was very sharp and short. And famously, Warren Harding did nothing to interfere, and the Depression ran its course in a matter of a few months, and the economy corrected itself. Of course, it was a different economy back then. We were a nation of factories, which were not only pumping out a lot of stuff, but they were brand new. All of our industrial infrastructure was new, and
Right.
uh, so the recovery from that after the First World War was pretty sharp, except in the farms. And then the farms had a very strange thing going on. The Ford company had invented the Fordson tractor in the 19 teens and brought it to market. And so all these farmers in these new areas that are coming under cultivation in the U.S., in Texas, Oklahoma, and so forth, started this massive plowing with tractors, which they had not been able to do at that scale before. When they
Right.
were plowing with horses and things before 1910, you couldn't do that, and they disrupted the soil ecology of that part of the Midwest so
Thus
badly.
the Dust Bowl. Thus
Yeah,
the Dust
so
Bowl.
thus that and some climatic changes at the time in the 1930s. But there was also an additional problem that coincided with the at first, in the 1920s, they were overplanting. They had turned up so much new land with the tractors, and they had planted so much new land that the value of their crops went way down. At the same time that Europe was recovering from the First World War and were getting their agriculture back in order.
So no export.
It had been badly disrupted by the First World War with, trench warfare all over Belgium and northern France and part of Germany.
Here's one of the things I don't understand. First of all, I want to recommend either to you guys or to the listeners a book by Robert J. Gordon called The Rise and Fall of American Growth. It's a phenomenal description of wealth creation and what's real
Yeah.
wealth creation.
Very interesting.
He talks, it's a great book. And you really get the sense of, look, if it doesn't hurt when you drop it on your foot, it's not wealth. And he really goes into, and it turns out that there's primary inventions like electricity, stuff like that, and internet would be one, right? And then there's secondary inventions, which are the spin-offs that come because of that. And he said the greatest decade for secondary inventions was the 1930s.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He said that wealth creation really tapered off around 1970 badly.
Another element of that, I think, is that, after that secondary burst, what you get are just tiny little refinements of what's already there.
That's right. And I got an argument with, I think it was a Stanford economist about 10, 12 years ago, which I said, I think the Depression lasted till the end of World War II. And he said, no, the stats show it doesn't. And I made reference to, the rationing and stuff like that. I said, we were living pretty Depression era flavor until the end of World War II. And he said, no, but the stats show the economy grew X percent. But about 10 years later, I wrote about it and said, no, we were creating shit to bomb countries. Our GDP was based on debt, so we were pulling consumption forward, and B, based on something that had a life expectancy of a microsecond once it hit the ground.
Yeah,
right?
Destruction, in short, based on destruction.
And so that's bomb the shit out of people fallacy, right?
Or it's the same as paying people to dig holes and then fill them up.
That's right. So I think the Stanford economist or whatever he was wrong. I think it was Kennedy. But it took me 10 years to decide to go back at him again. But that's a great book.
Let me just interrupt for a second. Where does the idea of overinvestments and complexity come in with all that? Because that's the phase we're kind of in.
Money. It's the money. We're in a situation now where you can get rich running a private equity firm.
Mm-hmm.
That means monetary policy is too loose.
Yeah, it means also that basically the destruction of productive activity to some extent.
So it's a very destructive process, and it's been made too cheap to do. And so my dad ran a construction company through the 70s. Actually, it went for many decades, but one of the beauties of expensive capital is loose cannons couldn't compete. So mediocre people couldn't come in and destroy your business by undercutting your price, because only serious businessmen could survive. Mm-hmm. And you had to raise the capital. You really had to be a serious guy.
Hey, what kind of stuff did he build?
He was a secondary contractor. He built buildings, but he wasn't the primary. So he did acoustical drywall. So a number of buildings on the Cornell campus, for example, have, Collum derived, acoustics and things like that. And I saw a tractor trailer the other day with his company's logo on it, which was really interesting. So he did well, but here's the interesting thing. We lived in a house that was 1,600 square feet.
Small.
Well, so if you read, I'm trying to remember who the goddamn guy is. One of these deep thinker guys who thinks about society structure.
Jim Kunstler?
The divide between
Jim Kunstler?
No. I could look through my books and find. I should do it because I keep hitting this wall. But he talks about how the wealth disparity and the social distinctions and stuff were much smaller.
Sure.
A half a century ago. So the kids who went to Harvard were not 4.3 GPA students. They were Harvard kids. Yeah. The people who had money lived in houses that were bigger than the people who didn't, but it was not, garish wealth.
Yeah, the difference between the bank president and the factory worker
was 40.
Was the bank president drove Lincoln Continental and had a color TV, and the construction guy or the factory worker drove a Chevrolet and had a black and white TV.
That's right. And you also didn't display it. So I remember when my uncle built the big house, which by modern standards, you're looking at, that's not really a big house, but it's big at the time. And I remember my dad being appalled by it. He saw that as sort of garish display of wealth. And so that greatest generation, he's the guy, you'd eat leftovers, right? We didn't go out to dinner. We sat at the dinner table. And the other thing, here's the interesting part. He didn't end up dying fabulously wealthy because he didn't pay himself a lot. And he put the money back into the company. He said, when I retired, we were of the 39 companies of that flavor that existed when he started, he was the only one left.
So what do you think is going to be the destiny of these financial companies that do little except
move money?
Move money and destroy productive activity.
I think
that can't go on much longer.
They have to die. They have to die. They have to die for us to heal. I mean, this is like a gangrenous limb that has to be lopped off.
Do you see any sign that they're approaching that?
Well, I think the next downturn is going to be a real nasty mother. I don't think it's going to. The bullish pitch, and I've cobbled this together, and I can do it in about a minute and a half. In 1981, the Russians needed capital, so they sold resources like crazy. The Chinese needed capital, so they sold labor for slave labor wages. The U.S. had phenomenal demographics. The boomers were hitting the workforce. They brought their wives. I know Mike has heard this pitch. So the demographic story was phenomenal. We were we were still sort of fairly dominant in the world, and our interest rates, which by the way Buffett says is the whole ball game. He says direction of rates long term is the whole ball game. If they're going down, you're in great shape. If they're going up, you're in trouble. Period. QED. His 1999 Fortune article. Interest rates were 16% over the next 40 years. They went to zero. Yeah. Methodically, almost like someone said, we can squeeze 40 years out of this. You almost sense they knew they could march it down systematically. So everything lined up. The markets were priced at a PE of around 6, which is basically a PE to return around 15% cash flow off equities. They were dirt cheap. Inflation scared the shit out of everyone. That's why they were dirt cheap. But we were about to enter a bull market that didn't depend on Reagan. It was coming whether Reagan was elected or not. Our valuations, which drives me nuts because people don't understand valuations. A valuation is the price of something divided by something that it ought to track. Now, here's what's really critical. The numerator and the denominator are both inflation sensitive. So it's the price to GDP, it's the price, you name it. It self-corrects for inflation. We went from a valuation in 1981 to the current valuation. It was sixfold. We compounded the valuation, which should not move. It should just flutter around based on sentiment and stuff, but it shouldn't trend. And when the values are high, you're not going to get a return. When they're low, you're set up to get a good return. But they should flop around. For 100 years, they just flopped around. And then around 1994, they left the channel and took off. Never to look back. Not never. Not to look back for 30 years. We compounded our valuation 4% a year. The question I like to ask is what happens over the next 40 years when we compound it at minus 4% a year to get back to historical valuation? And we will get back there because we always do. There's not.
Hey, Andrew, I'm doing a podcast.
I'll get coffee.
I'll have to call you back. Oh, April. Can I call you back? Okay. Bye-bye.
So the bottom line is you can say, look, we'll never go back there. Well, if I'm using as historical valuation metrics 1880 to 1990, that's a pretty good baseline. Now, everyone likes to use, if they want to use 1880 to 2025, they can, but those last 30 years really perturb the average. Mm-hmm. So the Case-Shiller PE, the average was 12. It's now 38. The average, so regression to the mean, screw through it, just to it, is a 70% correction. Now, during those 40 years where they were dropping rates and the Fed could just turn knobs and shit like that because they could, we had V bounces. Every time something happened, it bounced. Every time, over and over and over. The next one's not going to be a V bounce, in my opinion.
It's just going to flatline.
And when guys say, we corrected, I go, you didn't correct if you bounce back. Mm-hmm. You corrected nothing, right? Yeah. You've repaired nothing. It's like you repair a broken leg. Well, if it's broken again 6 months later, it's not repaired. Yeah. So correct implicitly implies, there's a good one, that you somehow fixed it. And you haven't fixed it if you V-bounce it. So I think we're going to do a Nikkei-like thing where we're going to rot for 4 decades.
Yeah. Gail Tverberg blogs at
I read her stuff. Yes,
Our Finite World, and she put out her January one a few days ago.
Who is that, Jim?
Gail Tverberg.
The oil drum.
Tverberg. And she was an editor of the Oil Drum.
You must know her, right? You must know her.
Yeah, I know her a little. Yeah, I've met her a few times. But she consistently makes the point that behind all of the machinations of finance and numbers and interest rates and everything is the basic energy equation of the energy return on investment and the cost of energy and all of that stuff. She's not too sanguine about the global energy situation, and what she sees really now is a kind of a resource scramble, and that's really one of the reasons that
war.
Trump is that's partly, but one of the reasons Trump is making these seemingly outrageous new claims to want to acquire these vast territories in the Western Hemisphere. But it also suggests to me that, if we're really on the downhill side of the energy inputs, and not just oil, but, coal and uranium as well, that we have a serious problem. Now, we tried to compensate for that whole problem for the last couple of decades by replacing energy with the sheer momentum of finance, and a kind of a false momentum, and I don't see that really being able to carry on a whole lot further.
If you had to name if you got $100 for every person you could name who's prominent and stating this sort of reality, how much money could you make? Not much.
No.
So I think about market bears. Here's some market bears. Stephanie Pomboy. Everyone loves Stephanie. Jesse Felder. John Hussman. Grantham, sort of. Collum, Kunstler, Ferris. You run out of names fast. Now, I think there's guys like Jim Rickards called me an optimist, so I got to put Jim Rickards in that category. But you run out of names fast. Now, I think in Wall Street, if you predict a 20% correction and it goes 60, you didn't lose much. If you predict 60 and it goes 20, you lost a ton. You will never hear a negative prediction out of, say, remember the Y2K guy, come on, who's the guy who was front and center, very famous economist, JP Morgan, I think it was. God damn it, my brain is shut off now in old age. Yardeni.
Oh, yeah.
Yardeni, he made a big, bold prediction on Y2K, which was, I believe, a grift. I've had arguments with software guys. They say, no, we fixed it. And I go, no, we didn't. There's no chance. Because if we had fixed it, there would have been explosions in other countries that didn't.
So are you saying that
they sold software and hardware?
It was just a fake out?
It was a fake out. In fact, the guy who made it famous was this guy named Yeager. This is blast from the past for you, I bet. Yeager. He was out there ringing the bell saying, oh, we are so fucked because that 00 thing's going to blow up every computer. About 6 months before Y2K showed up and he had rung that bell nonstop, he said, never mind, we fixed it. And I go, oh, no.
I fell for it.
I fell for it too. But here's the deal. It was risk of unknown probability. And if you don't address risk, like wearing your seatbelt, let's go with that one. If you don't address risk, you will be taken out at some point, right? And evolutionarily speaking, you had to respect risk. By the way, another great book, by the way, is Brett Weinstein's book on hunter-gatherer. It describes modern people as hunter-gatherers. And I use that. I've been using that model for so many years now.
Can you explain that briefly?
Well, so I'm walking through the store with my wife one day. This is when it hit me.
Yeah.
And she stops cold and starts fondling a blouse. Guys don't do that. They're going through the store. They've got a spear. They're looking for elk. Right? They want to skewer that thing, skin it, and get the fuck out of there, right? And the women are sitting there and they're tell me what gender I am when I'm shopping and I'm doing this. Right? That's not a dude. I saw a meme that said the chick is reading sort of for special dry hair with blah 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 blah, and the guy says, it says you can clean your hair, your armpits, your crotch, your car, your rug, and he's going right. And so we're just wired for hunter-gatherer. So one day I put out a tweet that made it into the well-known biomedical journal Stats. My tweet made it in there. And I presented the hunter-gatherer model, and I said women are more competitive because when we hunt, we have to hunt as a group. When they gather, they're competing, right? And I wrote, that's my route, bitch. and it made it into Stats in an article. I can't even remember the context, but it was really funny. So I don't even know how we got on this topic, but these are fun stories.
Yeah. Well, I think the way we got on it was we were talking about Y2K, but also talking about how financials replaced, energy equations in the economy. And so when I hear about, interest rates
but it can't. Financials. Some guy was ranting about AI and how good it is for him. And I'm listening to his business. I did a podcast with him. Smart guy. And I said, well, your business is moving money. So making your business better achieves nothing.
Yeah.
Right? When AI can make a better widget, I'm all ears. By the way, I heard something the other day. I want to know if any of you heard this. I read it on Bob Moriarty's site. Speaking of crotchety old bucks, a woman said that we will reach a point where I don't want to go to Bitcoin, but I got to tell a story because I've been dying to ask someone where Bitcoin, a transaction will cost the amount of energy that a household uses.
Oh yeah, that was Wendy Williamson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good call, Jim. So the question is each transaction getting more expensive energetically?
It would appear to be. It would appear that the amount of energy needed to crunch the numbers that go into every Bitcoin transaction and creation are so gigantic that it costs the same amount of energy to run a household to create a Bitcoin.
And so far, the system, because of the huge capital gains, the system swallows it, the cost of that.
And also because the Bitcoin sector is such a relatively small part of the financial picture.
Sailor's going to go down at some point. That's going to be epic. That's going to be epic.
I suppose.
Well, he's leveraged. I mean, he is. Do you know the story of the Eggman? You know the Eggman? So some guy's buying egg futures. You ever heard this story, Mike?
No,
The guy's buying egg futures, and he buys some egg futures, and they go up. He goes, "Oh, this is really good." So he buys some more egg futures, and he's getting richer, and he's got a ton of money. He's got a ton of these egg futures, and he says to his broker, and he says, "I want to sell now." The guy says to him, he goes, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're the Eggman." he was driving the price of the egg futures.
Yeah, right.
And that's what Janus did, like in the .com. Janus owns so many of those .coms. That they couldn't exit their positions.
Yeah. And Lehman Brothers with their, janky mortgages.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I love it when they say no one saw it coming. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, we were screaming at the tops of our lungs. And you can give Nouriel Roubini credit if you want. He deserves some. I wrote about the subprime crisis on May 6, 2002. Mm-hmm. Right. And you say, well, that too early is wrong. I called the collapse of the banking system. I'm 5 years early. Is that wrong? Really? Is that wrong? No, that's not wrong. That's early.
And in 2007, you could see it very clearly, too. If you just if you had a look at how they were finagling the tranches in the mortgage-backed securities and how they were fobbing them off, it was obvious that was going to go wrong.
And what's the name of the blogger? Not Titania.
Titania McGrath?
No, that's a dude. Now, Doris Dungy. But there's this woman who is posting about the chaos underneath the system, saying in the pipes, you can't believe what's happening. The market ABX index, which was a derivative index, was traded at par and then started dropping. And I think it was Seeking Alpha or something that's watching this going, this thing's dropping. And no one, so I'm in class. This is March of 2007. And there's no bells being rung yet. But the real estate market had peaked in 2006 quietly. And I turned to my class and I said to them explicitly, without warning, I do this all the time. I'll say the vaccine killed more people than the disease. Boom. No warning. I said to him, I think the banking system's about to collapse. And I said, I think you really will reach a point where you can't get money out of the bank. I think it'll be that bad. And so in February of 2009, I was teaching honors thesis course where we meet once a week and chat. They have to write a thesis. Same kids, day one. I said, did I warn you the banking system was going to collapse? And this is February of 2009. Think of what was happening, right? Mm-hmm. And they all said yes. And there are a lot of econ double majors in there, for example. It's a common double major, same math, for example. And I said, did any of your econ professors tell you this? And they go, no. And I said, what are those assholes paid for? And so my first guest lecture was the former CEO of Morgan Stanley Bank, who left in 2006. He knew because he cut his teeth on mortgage-backed securities. He said, holy fuck, I'm getting out of here, right? But a guy named Rich Ulick, the banking subsidiary of Morgan Stanley, and I got the best compliment I've ever got. I got to brag on this one. He stands up in front of the class. He said, we just had dinner. So this guy could tell the horror stories. He says, we just had dinner, and I realized 15 minutes into dinner that I'm not the smartest guy at the table. Oh, that was good. And for 2 hours, he told them horror stories about what was going on. And I, at one point, asked him, is New York going to be...
I'm doing a podcast.
I asked him, 10 years from now, distant memory for New York, or is New York Detroit? And he said New York was Detroit. So he didn't see the intervention coming either. He didn't see the successful intervention. He thought it was just all going to just burn in hell.
Yeah. Did anybody see the successful intervention?
No.
Because that kind of came out of nowhere.
Everybody.
And also, we still don't know to this day how many trillions of dollars were dumped into that hole.
The estimate is 30.
Especially the European banks.
The estimate is 30. 30 is the number I keep hearing. Now, I ask people, say, do you know anyone? Right? I've asked this question probably 100 times. Do you know anyone who saw it coming? Once in a while, someone will say, yeah, I saw it coming. I said they'd do anything they have to. I go, that's not calling 30 trillion, dude.
Mm-hmm.
That's a content-free statement.
Well, the other thing is, how do you suppose that 30 trillion has thundered through the global economy since then? Do you think that that's as responsible for the inflationary stuff that's going on now as the recent binge of spending? Or how did that get dissolved into the global economy or absorbed?
It's a fascinating question, because it certainly looked like it was going to explode inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow, so what they did is they took on assets that were of no value and paid for them, right?
And then they created these kind of these funds where they where they just sat forever.
Who are the guys? There's some great books written. Maiden Lane 1 and 2. Yeah. I stayed in the condo of Andy Huszar, who was the buyer of the $700 billion worth of bonds. He's the guy who said, and he said it was unbelievable. He said at first he was trying to buy bonds rashly, and they said, $8 billion a day, buy them. $8 billion a day, period. $8 billion a day. So he invited me to New York to a Monk lecture he did, a debate with this MIT economist, can never remember his name. He knew me. He said, "You're the chemist." I go, "Yeah." And he invited me down, and I stayed at his condo that night, which was in Harlem, which for me as a Columbia boy, that was stunning. I thought I was going to die when I was supposed to go to Harlem, and it was all really nice.
Yeah, I went to high school in the middle of Harlem.
Yeah, I know. That's a lovely place that back then. Yeah. But he took the side that the QE was a complete and utter colossal disaster. That was his stance. Yeah. And you know what he does now for a living?
Sells cars?
Women's clothing.
Get out.
With his wife.
Does he make them or sell them or what?
I don't know. I can still, I email him occasionally, say, "How you doing, Andy?" We went to Vegas together for something, a meeting, I think, and we went to Cirque du Soleil. He's a sweetheart of a guy. He was not meant for Wall Street. He was too nice.
Well, here's another question, Dave. All of those bonds and weird janky securities that were hosed into the maiden lanes and other kind of dead end funds. What's happened to them? What is the fate of? I mean, because they basically represent some debt that somebody has. There's a debtor on one end and there's a creditor on the other end.
Well, there's $2 quadrillion worth of derivatives now, notional value.
Well, those are just bets in place that had not been called.
Right, but the problem with $2 quadrillion is when I was at a conference at Cornell right in the middle of the crisis, and the stupidity of the people in the room was stunning. The stupidity. These are famous people. I'm having a discussion with Yale's real estate expert, and he says, "I don't know why they didn't just reestablish, reprice, and just resolve itself." And I'm looking at him with, sort of with my dog ears up, and I said, well, no one knew what was in them. and it happened too fast. And he goes, yeah, I guess you're right. And I'm going, you know. And then some guy stands up and gives a talk. He's talking about how China's got to keep buying our bonds. And I said, well, they're already moving towards the exits.
And, well, they've been selling them regularly.
Right. But he said, well, what do you mean? I said, they're going to shorter duration. And he says, what does that matter? And I go, because if you have 180-day paper, you're 180 days from being out. Right?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I guess you're right. I'm going, these guys are, some guy from the Fed gave a talk. And he again, I was raised in hell. The guy from the Fed gave a talk, and they used the term equilibrium as a solution to equation. But I got so tired of the term, that's like saying equals to them. Mm-hmm. And he kept referring to the Fed and equilibrium and stuff like that. And I raised my hand. I said, I don't see how the word equilibrium and the Fed should be used in the same sentence. I said, the Fed takes the most important market in the world, in capitalism, the market where lenders and borrowers meet to haggle over the price of capital. There is no more central market than that, the money market, right? And they bid, and that's where it should be constantly equilibrating, right? Mm-hmm. And the price should go up or down depending on availability and stuff like that. And the Fed sits there and 12 guys who've never held a fucking job sit there and say, oh, the price is not right because it doesn't comport with what we think it ought to be. And therefore, we're going to try to change it.
Yeah, so you don't have price discovery, which is basically
that's a Soviet model. That's a Soviet model. So that's the problem. And that's why you end up with private equity guys controlling huge swaths of money and stuff, because the price of money is not being set.
Well, we don't know what's happened to the bad debt that's been buried.
That's a good question.
That's been buried, and it does kind of make you wonder. And you know, there's all this new debt in constant motion, you know, new and recent debt in constant motion, and it makes you wonder just how fake is the financial part of the world economy.
Well, I think it's totally fake.
Isn't it all just buried under taxpayer dollars, though, Jim, Dave? I mean, it's just, isn't it all just buried under taxpayer dollars?
I don't think there's enough taxpayer dollars.
Well, they just keep printing it, though. They'll just keep digitally moving. No.
Here's the debt. So our university president's brother, there's a guy named, our university president's Michael Kotlikoff. Yeah. Lawrence is his brother. I got to know him from the day he arrived. And so it was really helpful when I was getting canceled and shit when the provost was actually a friend of mine. It still didn't help, but it was helpful. And I had trustees protecting me. That was good. But he's now president, and his brother's Larry Kotlikoff. And Larry's the expert on unfunded liabilities. He wrote the book. What's it? Generational Storm, I think it was called, the book.
Yeah. I don't remember the title, but I remember he was very much in the news about 5 years ago or so.
More so.
He was making more noise.
I don't think he's paying attention now. Once in a while, I ask him what the current level is, and it keeps going up. But unfunded liabilities are where if you project the promises you've made and you make reasonable estimates of the revenues that you can make over that same, amortize out to infinity. Say, okay, based on everything we promised, everything we can earn over, what is not paid for? What can we not account for? Social Security that's over promised, things like that. And the unfunded liabilities are $250 trillion.
Yeah,
that's
an impossible number.
That's the part where you say, okay, I've got my bank, I've got my checkbook, and I've got my bills, and they're off by $250 trillion.
So isn't it now they can just digitally move things around, and it won't be till you have some...
Not forever.
But it has to be some kind of hiccup, like another pandemic or some type of black swan.
Well, they put $8 trillion to save the pandemic. By the way, if you want to blame the lockdown on someone, blame the Fed. If the Fed had said, no, we can't do it, they wouldn't have locked down.
No, but what I mean with that, though, is until there is some type of hiccup they're going to just keep printing. They're never going to stop. Not at this point.
The shadow banking system is so outside my skill set, but I believe so. The way you create money is you loan it into existence, right? This is where the Bitcoin guys were really helpful because they had this, and why the MMT guys were helpful. MMT is total bullshit. but they did a very good job of explaining how the banking system works as they were trying to justify their idiotic, moronic approach to government. But you lend money into existence. So a bank loans you money. They don't loan anyone's money. They just loan money from nothing into existence. God damn it, the spam I'm getting. They loan money into existence. So they'll loan you a $500,000 to buy a house. That's not someone else's savings. That's just new money. Mm-hmm. That just gets put into the Fed's ledger, I think. I never quite know where it gets hidden. And so the way you get out of a problem of a liquidity is you just loan more money. And so it's a Ponzi scheme, right? Yeah. It's new debt being put into the system. But I think at some point it just has to stop. I have this, it strikes me as a truism, a law, a thermodynamics. At some point it has to stop, and there'll be a big reset.
Don't you think that's what
someone will shake?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dave.
We could be.
Well, hey, by the way, have you noticed that Thomas Piketty has gone from the scene? You never hear about him anymore.
I didn't even notice he went so far from the scene. Yeah, I hadn't even noticed. Yeah.
He had a big book about 3 years ago.
I had no interest in reading his book. Based on the reviews I read, I said, this is horseshit. I don't care what he says.
Yeah.
There's some great books out there. I felt that was not one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was.
Well, do you think that this market cratering is going to occur sooner rather than later?
I don't think it'll be a crater.
You don't think it's going to go down 80%?
I think it will, but if it does so abruptly, the dip buyers will show up and it'll V-bounce.
So you see this as
it's got to rot.
A very long, slow process.
It's got to rot. It's got to get knocked on its ass, go down maybe 20%, rise up 15, tread water, go down another 20, rise up. I think it's got. I was on a Twitter Spaces with George Noble, and he was Peter Lynch's understudy. That's ground zero. Peter Lynch was the man. He wrote the books on how to invest in the 70s. He's the guy who started investing in the Open Magellan Fund, right? He became very famous. Mm-hmm. And I said to George in the Twitter Spaces, I think the markets will be uninvestable. He says, what does that mean? I said, I think you won't be able to make money. Think of as a unit cell, a control system is the Nikkei. It's a big market. And starting in 89, it became uninvestable. He starts talking about how you could short it and this and that. I said, well, first of all, the average Joe can't. Second of all, I don't think you could even short it because it
was flatlining.
Well, it went from 89 down to, it went from 42,000 down to 6,000, but it took 20 fucking years. Mm-hmm. You get destroyed trying to bet to the downside on something like that because the bounces keep chasing you out of your short positions and stuff. I'm not sure that it's not done going down some more, right? That's where it would get really weird.
Yeah, well, it's back at 40,000.
Right, but that's 40,000 35 years later.
Yeah.
If you were a 45, 50-year-old, rich shogun, you're now broke. Yeah. So I think that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to rot the fish from the head down.
Just over time, though, kind of like what Jim talked about, just a continuation of a slow burn.
Time is my worst enemy. If they can stretch some of this mess out over time, it's really uninvestable even for us bears. If they can rot it down over 5 years, I will still have time to buy assets at a reasonable valuation.
Yeah, that seems to be the Trump strategy, which is to compensate for all of that disorder with resource grabs.
So to mitigate some of the damage.
Yeah, to mitigate it and to, I mean, if you do get a situation where the country does manage to become at least a bit more productive of producing real things in factories, and you build new factories, and if that happens, I think they may be able to put this off a while. But they're still still faced with the basic resource conundrum.
So last time you and Luongo and I were on together, Tom and I got into it pretty tight. on that issue. And so he was talking about, and Tom blows my circuits with his global analyses, right? They're unbelievably encyclopedic.
Yeah, and dense.
And dense, very difficult to understand. In fact, I think I said to him in that podcast, I said, I will quit podcasting with you when I finally understand what the fuck you're saying. But it's very, very impressive. But he was talking about a sort of a quick repair, and I said, no, none of this. If Trump does what my wildest hopes are, is he will start the process. That's all we can hope out of him.
It's interesting you say that, because I had Andy Scheckman on yesterday from Miles Franklin, and he was talking.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, he was.
I like Andy. Yeah. I like Andy.
Well, we were talking about. It was a short conversation, and actually, we started the first part of it talking about baseball cards. He's an avid sports card collector, Babe Ruth's and Mickey Mantle, and pretty interesting. But anyway,
my dad had Murderer's Row signature on a ball. Murderer's Row. He won it in a raffle.
Did you sell it?
So I said, what happened? And he said, we played with it. We lost it. And I said, it was the Depression, right? You didn't save a baseball. And I said, you know what that would bring on the open market now? He says, no, how much? I said, probably 100,000.
Yeah,
he goes, oh my God. And I said, you know why? Because every other kid played with theirs too and lost.
He said the highest rate of return ROI he's gotten is of everything he's ever done is the highest has been on his sports cards.
Who was that, by the way? Was that Babe Ruth, Gehrig, Lazary? Who else?
I can't remember. I'm not a baseball guy.
Oh, never mind.
I can pick DiMaggio, maybe.
No,
He's too later.
That was later. Yeah.
Okay.
Murderer's Row was the 1920s, I guess, and early 30s.
So
yeah.
Let me play this part. I actually put this clip on X, but he was talking about how he had a gentleman by the name of Francis Hunt on his show, who's a seasoned trader.
Francis Hunt, yeah.
All right, I'm acting like you guys don't know who this is.
Have you noticed how fucking crazily connected we are in this world? We all know each other.
Not me, man. I'm a newcomer. I'm a newcomer. I'm a newbie to all this.
Mike,
I'm green.
You have green. More of these guys than anybody.
That's because of my telemarketing skills, and because you two keep coming on, so I'm building credibility.
Yeah. Now let me like a
Anyway, let's get back on.
Let me play this part of what Andy said yesterday based on this conversation. You guys, you cool with listening for 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Right.
No, fuck you. We're hanging up.
It became hard to not agree with some of what he said. I said, wait a minute. You mean you're trying to tell me that Trump has people pulling the strings above him? Oh, yeah, faceless, nameless people, but yes. And part of what he said was that they let things get so bad over the last 4 years purposefully. They wanted to do that, to make it so bad that people, and then bring in a challenger who was so inept that guaranteed that Trump would win, so that you would have people willingly. Now, I've been saying for a year that they'll do digital ID for election integrity. He just came out and said that. Francis Hunt said it, and then he said it. Trump said, yes, we're going to do a digital ID for election integrity. And if you look at the comments on Twitter, they were all like, yeah, absolutely, great, amazing. Well, that rolls in the digital surveillance state. If you look at Bill Gates and his patents on digital ID 2020 with the Rockefeller Center and with the big... what's the name of the group? The big, it's not one of the medical companies, but there's a big vaccine-based conglomerate, and they're all together in these patents on digital ID 2020, which focus on everything from your passport number, your bank account information, your health records, moving into that type of system, ultimately a central bank digital currency. It's compelling, his argument, that they let things get this bad to bring in the person and his cabinet who would reinstill the American culture, but along the way, backdoor everyone's...
I can't hear it, Michael.
Yeah, it's garbled.
Level, if you will, with a digital
Still?
environment. And look at, what is Elon Musk? Everyone loves Elon.
I think we got it. I think
something about digital IDs.
I could get it till then it was going out on me.
Oh.
So what's the gist of it, Michael?
basically how Trump was brought in to reset the financial system, and that they're at the end of the line, and to move it over into a digital currency, hence a digital ID, and it made me think of like with crypto right now, and how even Trump is behind crypto, government is adamant about crypto, and I don't know, it made me think differently of like, all right, was this all tied into moving into the next phase, a new system?
I think crypto was teed up to crowdsource the debugging of digital currencies. So I think crypto, they said, look, let's let the public run with the various cryptos. Let's let them figure out how to set up exchanges. I mean, this is the best way to do it, right? This is the free market in action. But then at some point they're going to say, okay, step aside, we'll take it from here. It's brilliant if they did it. By the way, the first paper ever to talk about crypto, and actually use the word currency and use the word coin, were 3 NSA guys. Somehow that smells wrong to me. So I
National Security Agency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's possible this is not avoidable, right? And it's possible that we can all shit in our pants all we want, but it's just going to happen.
It seems to me that it's an effort to move an already completely abstract money system to a higher level of abstraction. And I don't see that can necessarily work. The further you move it away from real stuff, including the real energy stuff, I think the more, trouble you're getting yourself into. The more overinvestments and complexity you're making.
Well, could that be part of the Etch-a-Sketch where because we're over indebted, it's going to solve that problem? So our resources, this is where Tom and I sort of got in. Remember, we were talking about the capital. Yeah. What's capital? What's really capital? It's education, it's resources, it's factories, it's the ability to create wealth, cities. Right? Things like that. We do have that kind of capital, but the world can be in debt. Some people think it can't. They say, look, for every borrower, there's a lender, and therefore the world collectively can't be in debt. And the way I explained that's false is a simple example. I said, if the leaders stood up at the microphone at the United Nations and said, we're going to provide free retirement and free health care for everyone, we just went into debt.
Yeah.
Right. And we have done that independently, right? All the countries, everyone in every country thinks they're going to live better than we have the resources to live.
Well, the other question is, how much is a move to a digital currency just another kind of jubilee?
Yeah, that's right.
And, if jubilees are essentially moves to extinguish debt, when you extinguish debt, you're basically destroying money. So then how does that result in a lower standard of living for everybody? Basically.
Well, does that tie into the great taking? Oh, sorry, Dave. Does that tie into the great taking of the buy-in? Like instead of the bail-out, it's the bail-in, as they move into that digital currency and then determining the value of what your worth is?
Well, the bail-in is more of a twist on extinguishing. Well, it's not really extinguishing debt. The bail-in is a twist on just reallocating the ownership of who's the proprietor of the collateral.
So there's an interesting theory of the boom-bust cycle in the modern era. And I think this is the essence of Akerlof's paper from '96, where basically the system obviously makes a lot of money. The power brokers make a lot of money during the boom, right? Mm-hmm. The bust then erases all the crap, right? Gets rid of all this malinvestment and all the bullshit fantasy wealth and stuff like that. And then at the end, who ends up owning the capital? And the answer is the rich guys. And so what happens is, like when the housing busts here, where'd the inventory go, right?
Yeah, to BlackRock, eventually.
To BlackRock, right. And then so what happens is then you restart the cycle again. And so what you do is you get the populace to risk everything, to innovatively create wealth. You get the boom, they invent things, they invent new companies, and then you get the bust and they get their money all squeegeed away.
Yeah.
And
well, the BlackRock
and the
thing,
powerful guys get the assets at the end.
The example that you raise of BlackRock is interesting because what they did was buy up a lot of the houses that were in default. But what, and then the question is, what are they going to do with them? Theoretically, they rent them back to the people who lost their houses. There's so many, and there are more and more people who can't afford to buy houses and have to rent. But the assets that they took over were really incredibly fast depreciating assets, especially if they become rentals.
Single family rentals are terrible.
And not only that, but these are single family houses that are built out of strand board and glue and vinyl. They have a design life.
Cardboard sheathing.
Yeah.
Cardboard sheathing.
They have a design life of 17 years at best, maybe. And if if your way of utilizing them is to rent them out to people who tend to destroy property.
But they're not looking that far out.
Well, it just seems that, the collateral here is really worth a whole lot less than they pretend that it's worth. And the whole scheme is really going to be a dissolution of wealth more than anything else.
But BlackRock will find a way to get rid of it, I think.
Well,
before it lands on their lap.
They can fob it off to buyers by selling it for a lot less. For a lot less. Equity. I don't think so. I think ultimately they sell it back to just the public at an incredibly discounted price, and then the public ends up with a strand board and plastic and cardboard house. Instead of paying $300,000 for it, they pay $40,000 for it. And then you're left with additional problems. Like by the time that happens, we're in so much trouble with the mass motoring matrix that the whole suburban matrix itself starts to enter its failure mode. These complexities that we face are really pretty daunting. Because a lot of them are on the ground.
Trump can't fix them. The guys who euphoric over Trump, and they think we're about to enter a boom,
a golden age,
are totally ignoring the scar tissue. Now, I'm not sure I subscribe to the idea that all 4 years was them teeing up Trump, but certainly they're trying to tee him up now. Right. Yeah. The things that Biden has done in the last 6 months, I've gone from being appalled by the DNC's choice for it bothers me so fucking much that the DNC, they owe us someone who has the potential of being a leader, and they gave us someone who they thought had the potential of winning, period.
But I'll tell you
and that's appalling.
Mm-hmm.
Where that, and hopefully I get him on to talk about this, but where I think people are so trusting of Trump and this administration that if he suggests or decides to move this now into this digital phase, I think people will do it. I mean, I saw Darth Powell on X. He was talking about, he wrote something along the lines of, okay, so United States taking over Canada and Greenland. That doesn't sound like mass deportations to me.
Darth Powell hates Trump. With a passion.
True. Yeah, that's true.
He hates him with a passion. Darth Powell and I have a 90% overlap in agreement, but the 10% we don't overlap on, we clash. And it's Trump. He hates Trump. He can't stop putting out Trump hatred posts. And I keep saying, so you can't take Trump literally. You have to take him seriously. I think that's a great phrase. So whatever Trump is saying, and these are the guys who said he's a big fucking liar, and now they're taking him seriously about taking over Greenland. Right? I go, yeah, excuse me, you called him a liar the whole way, and now you're saying he's telling the truth. This makes no sense to me. Everything he's doing is art of the deal. He's going to try to sign a deal with these different regions to get what he fucking wants.
Yeah. Basically, like the mining rights that now
That's
have
right.
gone to the Chinese.
Right.
They'll just go
Right.
to the Danes and say, I'll give you this if you don't sign that contract with the Chinese.
It's like saying we're going to put you away for 24 years if you take it to court, but if you plea bargain this away, we'll give you 18 months. That's what he does. He would have been a great prosecutor.
Well, we're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes. Yeah, ready to wrap it up, Jim?
Yeah, I got things I got to do.
Where can not that, I mean, you're on here enough. I think people know where to find you, but just in case, where can people find you?
I'm at Kunstler.com, www.kunstler.com. That will take you to my Substack, where I have relocated my website. And my blog comes out every Monday and Friday at about 9:30 or 10 o'clock Eastern time.
And Dave, besides under your desk, anywhere else people could find you?
On Twitter, I really am suffering sensory overload. I really am vexed by how to process all the information that we've talked about. And but my Twitter feed, in the very least, is just wise ass jokes and social awareness polls and stuff like that. And when Jim, I don't know if you remember this, Jim, when you followed me, I said, Jim, I'm not sure you're going to want to do this. My Twitter feeds are trashy. You said,
I don't
no,
understand.
okay.
I got to tell you, I don't understand Twitter. I follow all these characters on Twitter, and they don't show up on my feed.
I think there is such a thing as shadow banning. I think so I've been sitting within an error bar of the same number for 6 months in terms of followers. I see 100 new followers a day, and
I'm only getting one
change.
thing on my feed, and that's little quizzes about, yes or no. Do you vote for this? Do you vote for that? That's all I get on my Twitter feed. I don't get any interesting
we should do an
information.
experiment. We should do an experiment where I tell you that I'm about to tweet, and then you look at your Twitter feed and you see if you see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And because I've had so many people say, look, I have to go look for you. And
I do go look for you. I read you every night, practically.
Well, so there's another funny thing where Fleckenstein must do that, because I keep seeing him appearing in my Twitter feed. And he likes the fact that I'm usually shooting both six guns simultaneously at somebody. and Bill seems to like that. And so I think he does that too. But I've had so many people say they don't see me unless they look.
Yeah.
And but I see Darth Powell. I do see. Do you use lists, by the way? Do you use Twitter lists?
I just have a whole bunch of them bookmarked in one browser folder.
So Rudy Havenstein was seeing all my tweets, and he had a lot of followers. I said, Rudy, how are you seeing all my fucking tweets? He said, lists. So, there's guys who follow me who I said, okay, it's kind of like LinkedIn. So I'll follow him back because I do want to be connected with that motherfucker, right? I got followed by Thomas Massey, right? So I go, okay, I follow him back. I want to open the channel, but I don't need to necessarily read everything that he does. So I also have independent lists, and one of which is entertainment, where at 1:30 at night when I'm fried and I want to kill 20 minutes to go to
Radio
sleep,
Genoa.
I go to my entertainment list, and that's where I watch a guy named Steve Inman hysterically narrate street fights and French bulldog videos and things like that. And I've collected these just purely entertainment Twitter feeds. And so lists are really useful.
Yeah, I could do that. I could just create subfolders.
I should probably do it too.
I should do the lists.
You know what I watch for entertainment? I know then we'll go.
How do you physically do the list thing?
Well, I already have them.
Do you guys want me to end this? Do you want me to end this and you guys can talk offline about this?
For a minute,
yeah.
Okay.
No, I was going to add you real quick. I was going to say, I watched this animal alligator sanctuary YouTube channel in Florida. And it's great. The guy swims with alligators. He's got a pork-crusted porcupine. He's got a skunk, an owl, crocodiles. It's a couple. I love it.
Everybody needs a little friend.
There's some great feeds though. Like there's nature feeds. I got followed by the British Museum for reasons I don't understand.
They think you're a mummy.
They must that or I'm a fucking animal.
I'm glad I didn't turn the recording off.
So how do you do lists? If you go down to the bottom, of your menu along the left side, there's a thing called More.
Oh.
And if you go to More, you'll see some other stuff, ads, jobs, but the top one is lists. And so you go into that. If I hit lists, I can not only see my lists, but there's at the very top, there's a thing where you can add a list.
Okay.
And
simple
I
enough.
think it's at the very top. Yeah, there's a page that has a plus sign on it. It says new list, then you name it. So my list.
I don't navigate around Twitter very well. I find it baffling. I don't even know how to send a direct message.
There's a thing on the left that says messages.
Yeah, but I can't. I've tried to send direct messages, and it just defeats.
Do you use it on your computer, Jim, or on your phone?
Oh, I use it on a computer.
Oh.
So you go to messages, Jim, and there's a box that looks like you're supposed to go to it, but that's where you go to look for messages that already exist. Up in the upper right, there's an envelope with a plus sign.
Oh.
And that, you hit that, and up comes a search people, and that's not searching Twitter. And so if you type in that and search David, it probably selects for it. Well, so when I do search people, I see all familiar people. So they're people in my feed.
Here,
and then you start typing the name. And then you hit next, and that will then give you the text message. Where you type the text. So where you're confused is the thing that looks like it says search direct messages.
Yeah.
Those are searching pre-existing messages.
Yeah, yeah.
Or people who've already so if I DM you, if you search in there, you'll find the string of our text messages, which you can then add to that.
I'm looking at it now.
Yeah, you can add to that. But if it's a new message to a person you haven't DM'd before, like I DM'd Cheryl Atkinson recently, you got to go up to that envelope in the upper right.
All right.
You can also use Google and say, how do I do messages on Twitter? And you'll get a 2-minute video that'll show you all this shit.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay.
My son taught me finally. He's slowly but surely taught me that going to YouTube and searching how to fix things and stuff like that is valuable.
Yeah. I have used that for a lot of things. Car things.
I'm slow to do that. My son is my older son is techie. My millennial son couldn't punch his way out of a wet paper bag on the computer, which makes no sense to me. He wanted something he couldn't get at the store, and I went to Amazon, and there it was. I go, you don't know to go to Amazon and search that thing by name, right? It could be he duped me because he knew if I saw it there, I'd buy it for him.
Is that the violin player?
Yeah. The money flows from the bank of Dad, the BOD, to the violin player, and my older son's starting a company, and he's going to need some capital.
Is it private equity?
The bank of Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, not private equity. I don't even want to say what it is for fear that I'll sort of give someone he has. Let me put it this way: his company is addressing the probability that we're going to go from college to trades.
Well,
be a good bet.
I'll tell you.
I talked to him a lot about it. And I said, "You're right on the money, in my opinion."
I'm going to throw one thing in here. Jim and I talked about this last time. I've had Matt Smith on a few times, and his son Maxim, Matt, and Doug Casey are writing a book called The Preparation. And Maxim, instead of going to a 4-year degree, instead of going to college, he did EMT school, which then led him to fight wildfires in Oregon. He's been doing like jujitsu from the mental, playing chess, but Matt's taking the money that he would have spent at a 4-year degree and having him learn life skills.
Yeah.
So I did the math on that, by the way. When I came up for tenure, when I went into chemistry, I was till Christmas of my senior year was going to go to med school. and I at the last minute decided to go to grad school, and it was based on the conclusion that I could get a top 10 job. And if I couldn't get one, I didn't give a fuck, and I got one, so it worked. But when I came up for tenure, and I didn't know if I'd get tenure because I was very offbeat compared to my peers, I thought about, well, then go to med school if you don't get tenure. Don't go to some shitty school and try to do the same thing over again. And I did the math. I said, okay, if I go to med school, I will have no income. I will pay this much. I will then become an intern, a resident. I assumed something about my income. I probably overestimated my income that I'd get. And I then said, if instead I go to Pfizer, and I probably underestimated my income there, and it wouldn't pay for itself. I'd be 60-something years old before going to med school was actually more profitable than just going off to Pfizer and working. And so that 4 years of no income, 4 years of tuition, it is a fuck. UPS drivers, I'm told, get a fortune. Have you ever heard that? They get paid a ton.
Mm-hmm.
You become a UPS driver instead of going to college. The only guys who are beating you got a Wall Street job. Parents have to be better consumers with their kids. The parents feel this obligation to do whatever the fuck the kid wants because they don't want to in any way stifle this progress to adulthood. Parents need to look over their shoulders. And I said to my younger son, I said, look, if you can get into Cornell, I'll pay. But if you can't, you're not going to some private school that costs a fortune that's no better than a state school. You're going to Binghamton. You're going to one of those other ones because I'm not paying extra money for no fucking gain. But he got into Cornell. You know why? Besides the fact he's pretty good. His name is Thomas Ezra Cornell Collum. His brother, his uncle is a trustee named Ezra Cornell.
Well, I guess it's who you know, huh?
Well,
I'm thinking about changing my name. Michael
my
Ferris
legacy
Cornell.
goes back. Actually,
To James Cornell Kunstler.
Oh, I was going to
Some
do Michael
Chinese-
Cornell Ferris. I'll do Michael Ferris Cornell.
Some Chinese kid asked some guy, how do I increase my chances of getting into college? They said, change your name to an Anglo name.
I'm trying to get Jim to adopt me. Jim.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'll change it. Michael Ferris Kunstler.
Like an ancient Rome. Or
Oh,
Greece,
yeah,
I
right.
guess it was. Yeah.
Guys, until next time.
Okay.
Mike,
A pledge.
mic drop.